Hello, sorry I'm late.
Hello. Hello.
Wow, nice background.
I saw from Eric that he will be late in the Slack chat. So I guess we don't need to wait for him, but I'm not sure if we expect anyone else to join. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm afraid not. I think Matthias will not join. He normally just attends these meetings on Wednesdays. And I'm not sure. Brad, of course, it's very late for him, so I guess he will not join.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Ben plans to join or anyone else, but I guess we can get started.
Yep.
Share my screen. Right. Hopefully you can see that.
Yep.
Okay, so this is September the 6th, CDEvents vocabulary discussion meeting. All right, a couple of things on the agenda. Oh,
There's Kara as well coming in. Nice. Hey, Kara.
Hello, how are you all?
Quite all right.
Yeah, fine, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good. We had a 3-day weekend in the United States. Did you all have one as well?
No, we didn't.
Oh, no.
No.
That's not fair.
It's not right. Yeah.
So we were just about to start. And yeah, so a couple of things on the agenda for today. And if you have more things, just let me know or add them to the agenda, please. Yeah, so action item from last time, adding JSON schema to the spec. The PR is still work in progress. I managed to solve the schema ID to point to what I wanted, but yeah, I not updated the PR yet, so still work in progress. For the custom data field, I have a PR up, which hopefully it's the functionality is in the spec. Sorry, the PR up on the spec that you approved. And yeah, just wanted to ask whether it's okay to merge it or we want to have more eyes on it.
It's fine to me. Has anyone else commented? No, no one else has commented, right?
Yeah.
But I guess we can live with it as is. It must be quite all right, I think. And if people want improvements later on, of course, they can propose them later.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good to me. I was thinking along the same line, so. Okay, that's great. Let's end. And I started working on the SDK version of that. The PR is up, but it's not complete as I'm still working on the unit test basically, but otherwise should be fine. Yeah, I will regenerate the schemas as well. And also, yeah, I fixed the ID here to point to the URL that we want to have. Schema includes the new fields in there. And also it's nice to see the jobs, the CI jobs that Brad kindly added. They're working now. So we have linter and unit tests running.
So the unit tests are actually there running now. How much of the unit tests are there now then? Just a few, or what is the coverage?
I don't know if this job shows the coverage, but most of it, I mean, I tried to be thorough with the unit test.
Good.
So if you look at the, yeah, the code, got the binding tests. And what I'm doing, it's basically I got one test per each event type to make sure we cover all of them. So starting from the JSON, we're starting from the events. So that's, yeah. This is for the binding. I got the test for the JSON binding and for the cloud event binding. Yeah, well, test for the factory methods and.
But what about all the other Go files? I'm not too fluent in Go programming, but you don't normally have test files for each of the other Go modules, or?
Yes, you can have test files for each Go module, but because most of the code for all these modules is basically identical.
Okay, yeah.
It's copy pasted. So I decided to kind of aggregate all the tests in a single Go module for them. And I'm looking into options for maybe generating this or being able to regenerate this automatically.
Okay.
Because all these, they have most what they have is this kind of getters and setters.
Yeah.
For this, and they all look identical. And the only exception is when you have some, let's take the pipeline run, for instance, where you have some extra subject fields, and there you have some extra setter fields for those, like this one here. And so there are some tests for those fields in the common test module.
But there is not much logic really in these modules then.
No, I guess the main bit is the new function and the structure of the body. So with the fields, if they are required or not. And this is used then to generate the JSON schema and to validate the events against the JSON schema as well.
Should it somehow be documented, I think, in the README file for this repository, how the unit tests are intended to be updated and such things? Is that valuable, you think, or is it just overhead?
No, it is. I was thinking of adding a document about how to add a new event type or how to add a new field to an existing event for the SDK. And yeah, it's a manual process for now, and maybe in future it will be automated. But regardless, yeah, it would be nice to have it documented.
I guess the README would say more or less how you use the SDK mostly, but maybe if you also want to add things to the SDK, you should be able to find information about how to update the SDK itself, maybe as well on the README, or I have it done.
Yes, I started adding a development.
Okay.
That at least tells how to run the test and build the code and so forth.
Yeah, but that's good. Maybe you can just add a comment there on how the what kind of test files or what files should be updated when a new, as I said, the new event type is added or something like that.
Yeah, I would do so.
Good.
Yeah.
So when we're at it, then you saw my comment on in one of the issues here in the last bullet in the agenda here, which refers to the old ticket that Matthias added last summer on unit test for the Go SDK at that time. So maybe that's overruled now, maybe then. And we could close that whole ticket maybe. If you go to the end of this, the last comment or the comment from me there in the ticket. Yeah. Because there is, yeah, that PR there is linked.
Bring.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So maybe we can just answer in this PR or comment in it and close it because it's already solved in the new version of the SDK then. If you feel it's covered there.
Yeah, I think we got good coverage. I can double check. I mean, the structure of the test is, the structure of the code is a bit different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, there was one test per event here, but there's a similar thing on the other side.
Yeah, so then I think it makes sense to comment this and close it, I guess. I'm not sure if we will need a general statement on. I think we discussed what or do we request from a general SDK, any SDK, like the Python or Java SDK as well. Of course, we would request that it has some decent level of unit testing. At least all event types should be produced by unit tests, I think, and maybe more things. Did we actually document that somewhere?
I think we made some notes in that in a previous meeting. I will see if I can go back and find them.
Yeah, I think we have it in the meeting notes, but I'm not sure if we have it in some formal GitHub README document or something.
Right. No, it might be that they're only in the meeting notes.
I'm not sure where it would fit either. Probably in the community repo then. Or maybe in the spec repo, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the community would be a good place. And yeah, I think once the spec, the schemas are in the spec repo, we should probably have the SDK run against those schemas, or maybe have a set of tests, like end-to-end tests somewhere that can be used against all the SDKs. so that we have like the unit test internal to the SDK, but also like a set of conformance tests that the SDK can be tested against to make sure that they are all producing content that is conformant with the spec. And maybe the test there could be based out of the JSON schemas in the spec or some example events in the specs.
Makes sense. With that, I think it should also be valuable in the SDKs to hard code the current version of the schemas that is used, right? Because if there would be an update to the schemas, all of a sudden all SDKs won't compile anymore, or the testing won't work. So maybe that should be a controlled activity to like lift the schema version in each of the SDKs, and when lifting it, it should also, of course, the unit tests and whatever should be updated accordingly, so that we can still do bug fixes on SDKs for old schema versions before we lift the schema. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, so far we only have one, or we only have the latest version of the draft version of the spec, but
so like in the Go SDK, at least I think it is hard coded today, but then when we make new versions, new version of the SDK, so this value can be different than. Yeah.
But you don't reuse it there on line 33 or 33.
Yeah, no, I don't reuse it here because this is a struct tag, and you cannot have variables in here.
Okay.
So I would need to use reflection to generate this code, but it's the only place where it's not reused.
Yeah, fair enough. Good.
Okay. All right. And yeah, for the custom data in the SDK, I will finish writing the tests, and then hopefully that can be merged as well. Right, other actions we had for last time, I think subscriber model consideration and tag run to the spec. I did not have time to get to that this time yet. And same for the next items, so document decision about prescriptive events in the spec, and create an issue for the POC demo implementation. So these are still outstanding, so I just reported them here so we don't forget about them. Okay, next thing I wanted to bring up is the versioning discussion. I think we had some good discussion on this issue, and no. And just to summarize it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the idea is that we would like to have versions on the spec, on the specification, but also versions on the events, and we would like to have semantic version on the events as well. And basically, the version on the spec just indicate a specific version collection of event versions. So in this example, there is no semantic version here, so that needs to be fixed. But we could have spec 1.0.1 where we have event A on version 1, similar for B and C. And then in the second version of the spec, event C only is changed and event D is added. And we could use semantic versioning for the event version as well. And the idea would be that if the event has a new field in a way that is backward compatible, there could be a new minor version of the event. But if a field is renamed or removed, then it would need to be a new major version. And I think the last right. The last thing we were discussing was how to handle the spec version while we are working on new version of some events. And my proposal here is that, okay, if we tag release 0.1, then on the main branch, we could have the events tagged onto 0.2 work in progress, for instance, and then change that to 0.2 once the spec 0.2 is stacked, is released, basically. And each event in the section, in the version, the spec version area, they could have a list that lists all the specification versions where this event exists. So like going back to the example before, for instance, event AE in V1 is available in spec 02 and spec 01. So when we are building an event A in V1, the value for the spec can be either 0.2 or 0.1.
So that means then that the JSON schema for event A would be updated in 0.2, even though the event itself is not changed. It's just the enum that is changed then. Enum for the spec version, right? So that is actually a change in the event schema, even though the rest of the event content is not changed at all. If you guess what I mean.
Yes.
We'll actually change, so we'll update the JSON file, the JSON schema, and maybe the documentation for the event even, saying what spec versions it's applicable for. But doesn't that also make it a new version of the event itself? Of course, not a major version, but maybe we should just update it, the patch part of it then, if we would have semantic versions for the events individually. Does it make sense? About the hen and the egg, which one is? To me, the spec is more a collection of events that we just contain within some version of the spec. But if the events themselves should know which spec they are part of, then we need to update in both ways, you see?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Or we could not have the list of versions in the schema, and then we would not need to update. That's also an option. But
yeah, and then it's free text and you can misuse it however you want, of course, but that's maybe okay anyway. I'm not sure how strict we need to be there. It's quite intriguing or interesting anyway to have the spec version, I think, in the schema as well for the event, but it's a bit hard to see the consequences of it, but might be fine. But I think we should show in some way that there's a new patch level or something of the event anyway.
right. Yeah, I mean, the alternative would be to, again, like you said, to exclude the spec version from the event itself. Or, I mean, other ideas could be to associate the version of the spec to the context, and the version of the event only to everything which is not the to the subject, basically, because the context is a shared part, and if the context changes, then we would need to change all the event versions, which also is fine. It's just an idea that came to me.
Where do we, in the current JSON schema suggestion, we have a version field, right, in the context, and that's the spec version right now.
Yeah.
But we don't have any dedicated field for the event version. Well, or do we?
No, we don't.
Part of the type now, or
yes. So actually, in the spec, there's one misalignment with the SDK. That's the only one I'm aware of. So in the spec, the type is unversion right now. But in the SDK, it's versioned. Let's see. In the SDK, it's like this with a .v1. So we need to decide which format we want to have, basically. If we want to have the version in there, or we want to have an extra dedicated field for the event version.
Because then that event version will probably also be on the context level, right? So there will be both an event version and a schema version on the same level, I guess.
Yeah. Or we could combine the two if you wanted, but like some format. But yeah,
you could even combine or include the spec version in here as well, if you like as well, like dev.cdevents.0.1.artifact.public.package.v1. But that might
There's a risk then that you would assume that there can be multiple artifact packaged versions inside the same spec version, which is true, I guess. I did have a related thought. I'm not sure if this is a good idea. It just feels good that the events are individually versioned with exactly the same version number as the spec version in which they were last changed. So if a new event is introduced in spec version 0.2, then that event is versioned 0.2. And if it is then changed or unchanged in 0.3, then it keeps its 0.2 version. And if it's changed again in 0.4, then it gets updated to 0.4. So we do clearly indicate that they are not the same events, but we also clearly indicate which spec version was it last changed in. So if I'm looking at spec version 0.5, I can look at all the messages, and if all the messages I recognize say 0.4, and I know I'm compatible with 0.4, then I don't have to worry. It's just a thought I had. It feels good somehow.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned how it would relate to the semantic versioning system, where we would step the major version for the spec itself when, say, an event type is removed, as opposed to changes in the event types or the event schemas themselves, where, say, a property or an attribute in the event type is removed.
That is a very good point. If it's important to keep or to signal the size of the change, using semantic versioning for events, then that would be more important. Yeah, I will draw back my proposal.
Yeah, I'm just continuing the thoughts. I'm not sure. I won't disable the thoughts directly, but yeah, it's an interesting idea, but I'm not sure if it holds really in practice, honestly. I would have been happy to say that we have this perfect solution for Eiffel and it works like a charm and we can just reuse it here. But unfortunately, we are struggling with a good way of supporting multiple versions at the same time of events, multiple versions of events, and multiple versions of the spec from the producer and consumer end. So I couldn't really say that we have the perfect solution there yet. But what we have there is individually versioned events, and then we have this spec version, we call it editions, but anyway, and that those are not, those don't have a semantic version, it's just a consecutive line of names without any version numbers in them at all. So that's what I was referring to, just as grouping events within a bag that we call an edition. But yeah, I still think we should have individual versions of each event type anyway. But if we should also include the spec version in the event schema itself, it's fine with me, but maybe we can start with having it just a free text string and see what issues we jump into. So we don't restrict it to a specific spec version for now. Is that okay? Yeah, have it as a string in the beginning.
So we would have the spec version as a free string and the event version. What would it be? You would see it more in the context or as part of the type? I think both have pros and cons. I mean, if you have it on the type, I think you can do the filtering just using a single field if you're looking for a specific version. But on the other side, if you want to, look for all the events of certain type, regardless of the version, then you need to kind of do a partial match.
Yeah. I think it comes back to what it costs to do the regex searches or the matches for, like in event federation scenarios or event filtering scenarios. It might be a bit quicker, of course, to match full strings and not just part of strings, but I don't know. I can't really say if there are any major drawbacks with including it in the event type itself. We don't do it in Eiffel, but that doesn't say it's not possible or not recommended. I can't say that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we need to take one approach at least. Maybe we can start one.
Yeah, but
way.
what do you, Eric or Jalander, say from a Python or Java perspective in the SDK world? Do you see any pros or cons with either of those ways forward? If I remember correctly, Eric, from your presentation of the Python SDK, you use the version in the method, right? Or was it in the .NET?
In Eiffel.net, we have it in namespaces for different versions, and I would prefer to do it the same in the Python SDK, I think.
So what would that mean for the schema or for the event type? Should it then include the version or not? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter to me. So when you say should include, I guess you're talking about the JSON data that is being sent out. No, so I think my initial idea would be that we have asymmetric sending and receiving, if you want to call it that. So for users, I think it's helpful to be able to say CDEvents and then a spec version and then some event type. And then in the SDK internally, we will figure out what event version we should send to correspond to that spec version. Because users will most likely not want to worry about sending a specific version of an event, but following a specific version of the spec. That would be one assumption. But when it comes in, then the only thing we would need to know is the version of the event itself. It doesn't matter what spec version the sender wanted to use, as long as we can decode it properly. And for that, we just need the event type itself. We don't care about the spec version.
You're right. But I guess a consumer of events needs to state somehow that I'm compatible with this spec version, even though I interpret all events individually with their versions.
Yes, they would have to announce that to the rest of the world.
Yeah,
not necessarily to the SDK, but to the rest of the world.
But to the rest of the world, to the ones that want to use it.
Yeah.
So the receiving side needs to know.
They just need the event version itself. It doesn't matter what spec it came from.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. But this is, yeah, so this is from the, it's kind of the how the SDK is implemented.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it doesn't impact really the format that we want to use then in the JSON. Yeah, my proposal would be to keep for now the context one as the spec version, and to have the semantic version for the event on the event type.
Yeah, sure. Let's try that. That's fine.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make some PR to reflect this when I get to it. But good. Thanks. Good discussion on this. Right. I have some small tool called CDEvents that I was thinking maybe we could demo, but I don't know if there is any other urgent or thing that people would like to discuss first. Okay. And I can briefly show them what this looks like. Okay, so this is basically a small tool that allows to send a CDEvent using YAML. It uses some tooling from Tecton. There is a Kubernetes custom resource, which is kind of like an extension of Kubernetes that is called Run. And I have I have it installed here in this cluster. And basically you can use the Kubernetes CLI to see runs. And each runs looks like, sorry. Looks like this. Okay, apart from the metadata, here are some parameters, and the parameters correspond to what needs to be put in the context and what needs to be put in the subject. And then the status reflects what happened with this. So whether the event was successfully sent or not. Or maybe there was some invalid format or invalid CD event. And then in the message, you will see exactly what was the problem. Right, so CDEvent itself is a Kubernetes controller that watches these runs. And when there is a new run submitted in the cluster, it basically look at the parameters and send the event. Let me see if I have. All right, so this is an example. I can make a new one. For instance, let's do an service event, maybe. So the way you use it, you need to put the type here. So let's have a look at the spec. Deployment. We have service deployed event. This is the event type. With the .1. Source is just, in this case, the tool, CDEvent run. The ID is a subject ID. So my service 123. And then we need to look at what do we need to define. We need to define an environment ID. An action 123. And if I go and create this resource, the reconciler hopefully send the event. And how can I know this was sent? I have Tecton dashboard here, and here I can see the event that was sent. And this is a service deployed v1. And the ID is generated, timestamp is set, the version is draft, and here is the event that was sent. So basically the way it works, my CD eventer is configured to send this event, CD event to a Tecton event listener, which then triggers a task run that logs the event here. So, and this is the first step. Is there any question on this, or does it make sense until now?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. So will the resource stay there in the cluster, or is it just a one-time, one-shot sending? Or
It's a one shot, but it stays there, so you can always go and look into the cluster history of resources that were assigned.
So there's no cleaning up done here then? Never. I mean,
No, it's
Yeah.
it's on demand basically. It's meant for quickly
Fantastic.
building the VOCs or integrations, and that's I show a bit better how that works now. So I have a Git, or Gitia, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Git set up in my cluster as well, with a clone of another repo. And I got some integration in place so that when I do a merge on this repo, it's basically using Git webhooks to invoke a Tecton event listener. And that event listener will create this run that I just showed for me to send a CD event. And so this basically allows to just using YAML configuration to map specific Git webhooks into CD events. And I can show you what this looks like. The YAML, if I can find it. Right. So Tecton is a concept of trigger, where I can say some filter logic. So for certain event, if the action is closed, so it's a pull request merged on main, then use these bindings. And this is how I extract the information from the Git webhook. So the event type in this case is hard-coded because I want to have a change merged when a PR is merged. The event data can be the original event data from the webhook. The source, I take it from some other, where is it? No, it's here, sorry. Yeah, the source would be from the original method, the pull request URL host. Yeah, and similar for, sorry, for other fields, subject, repo owner, repo name. I can extract this from the original webhook from Git, basically. And then this is the template where I receive that information that I extracted and I build a run. And here is the same that I showed before with the context and the subject, and I pass in the values that were extracted. In this way, basically I can take and say for certain webhook or certain events, cloud events from any source, if they are received here, I can extract with dedicated binding information, and then I can build a run, which allows me to basically map the original event or webhook to a CD event. And yeah, the custom data is not supported yet here because we just specified it. Just put for it.
Andrea, we can, or I can barely hear you. I'm not sure if everyone else can hear you.
That's right. Something happened with your sound, Andrea.
It sounds like a Bluetooth robot style, something like that.
Yeah, and by battery or something. No, we don't hear anything.
No, we cannot hear anything now.
Your microphone just died. Hello.
Now we can hear a fan.
Do you hear us, Andrea?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Just the old style turn off and turn on my headphones.
Reset, yeah. Restart.
Restart, yeah. get off the car, get on the car again.
Yeah, high speed.
Yeah, so the idea is, I don't know if you understand what I was saying, but if you could understand, but basically the idea is that you then can have a generic source of event, it could be cloud event or webhook pointing to this. And then for this YAML, you can map it to a run, and the run will send a CD event. And so just to do end-to-end demo, this is my repo I have in my Git. And I can make a PR. Push it. Okay. Origin. And create a pull request. And then if I merge the pull request and I go to my Tecton dashboard, I will see, okay, so this task run basically logs the original content of the webhook from Git. So there was a source event ID, and then it tells me similar to GitHub. So the SHA before, the SHA after, the details about the PR, the owner of the PR, the repository, etc., etc., etc. And then, right, so my run was created, which ended up in a CD event being sent to a different endpoint, which then logged the CD event. And you can see this is a CD event for the change merged. The source is get set to the URL of my Git server. And the subject ID here is pull request number 5. So if you take the source plus the ID, it's basically uniquely identify your pull request. And the idea is that the custom data here, when it's available, could then include the entire body from the original webhook, so that we store it and we have then all the extra information like the SHAs and so forth. And eventually some of this information will surface onto CD event level, like the list of the SHAs could move up. It's probably a good candidate. But for now, at least we have the custom data there and we can use it for the POCs. All right, yeah, that's
cool. Nice. So the Git there is actually the webhook handler, right?
Yeah, so it's basically like a GitLab or a GitHub. It's just hosted on my server, and it has a concept of webhooks similar to GitHub. But I thought for demo purposes, it's maybe nice to use something like Git, which is open source and it does not have any product behind associated. So if we implement something for Git webhook, like some Tecton resources to send CD events for Git webhooks, is maybe nicer, and we can host it in our POC repo. And it's more it's specific to a tool still, but it's more neutral than maybe doing it for a specific vendor like GitLab or GitHub.
Could we even include that in some Minikube demo session or something that you can use yourself from CDEvents.dev webpage, more or less, spinning up things, sending events, more or less in the browser? No?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I'm running this. I have got a cluster on IBM Cloud, but after I'm satisfied with the overall POC setup, I will try to check if it fits in a maybe kinder Minikube cluster that you can run. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Nice. I assume you will use this in a demo next week, or?
Yeah, I hope so. If I get to a stage where I have the other kind of events as well. But yeah. The nice thing is that for events where you don't have a source tool yet, or you can just send the event, just create a run with the correct type, and yeah, it needs to be supported in the SDK, but maybe I can use a branch of the SDK for those. And yeah.
Nice.
All right. Yeah. And I have this on my personal GitHub for now. But eventually, if folks are interested, I'd be happy to put it in the CDEvent org. So it kind of remains as a tool for building POCs.
Sounds good.
All right.
So that's more or less it for today then, I guess. 1 minute left.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
I guess, will all of us meet next week face to face? Will you be in Dublin, all of you?
Sorry, what was that last thing? I will will arrive on Wednesday and stay until Friday. So if anyone is there, then I will see you.
I will be the whole week there. I will not be on the summit though on Wednesday, but Thursday, Friday I will be there. And Jolanda, you will be there, right?
Yeah, I will be there first 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Cool.
And Andrea, how is your presence?
Yeah, I'll be there the whole week.
Good.
So, I'll look forward to meet all of you.
Yeah, see if we can have some good protocol discussions, maybe if we get a free slot somewhere. For example, I'm not sure what happens on Monday afternoon, really, if there's anything planned there after the mini summit.
Yeah, I need to check the schedule.
Yeah, we can reach out through Slack there. Okay, but see you next week then.
See you next week.
Yeah, see ya.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you. Bye bye.